Hello, I am Peter Bricky with Elevations Residential Treatment Center. I am one of our primary therapists here. Currently I work on the girls teams and really enjoy it. I specialize in dialectical behavioral therapy and aggression replacement training, and motivational interviewing are some of the ones that I've had training in, as well as trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the emotion regulation section of dialectical behavioral therapy. I really like this section. A lot of times the way I like to conceptualize this is if we were going to look at a graph and see what maybe a normal neurotypical trajectory is of emotions, we might see some up and downs depending on experiences that we have in our life. With the kids that we work with, emotion regulation, a lot of times we think of this as the emotions being a little bit higher or lower or more up and down than we would typically see on a graph if we were going to chart this. And we'd call that emotional dysregulation. With this section, it has a set of skills that talks about ways that we can decrease vulnerability to negative emotions and to manage these emotions a little bit better and understand what it is that we're experiencing. To start off with emotion regulation, we want to understand, why do we even need to bother with emotion regulation? What is it that we're trying to achieve here? And there's a few things that are helpful to understand. Taking control of our emotions is important because a lot of times the kids we work with don't really understand their emotions that they're experiencing, and they fluctuate and they're up and down quite often. They have intense emotions that are difficult to manage, and this often leads to problematic behaviors and an ineffective way of managing challenging situations. So the goals of emotion regulation are a few. Number one, we want to understand what it is that we're experiencing. A lot of times we experience very complex emotions based on experiences that we have, and we don't really understand why or what these emotions are. Understanding these emotions can give us a really good grounding of where we're at with them. Another goal of emotion regulation is we want to decrease vulnerability to these emotions and also be able to have better emotion regulation so the likelihood of experiencing negative emotions is not as high. We want to decrease the frequency of unwanted emotions, and we want to decrease emotional suffering. A lot of times we have experiences and we kind of cling on or hold on to those emotions, and what that does is that increases emotional suffering for us. In a way, it's almost like experiencing the negative experience twice because we're holding on to that emotion. So this goal is partially to let go of emotional suffering. We want to ask ourselves, what good are emotions? Why do we have emotions? What's the purpose of them? Well, one of the goals of emotions is so that we can understand our experiences. They give us information. If I'm feeling a certain way, that might tell me that the experience I'm having is a positive one, or it can give us information about our environment around us. Our emotions communicate how we're feeling to others and let others know and let us know where we're at in this experience. They can also influence others to act or do certain things or feel a certain way. Emotions also motivate us to prepare for action. Sometimes we think of the flight or fight response that we hear about sometimes. Our emotions help give us motivation to act a certain way, possibly when there's threatening situations that are happening. One of the first skills of emotion regulation is one that I actually really like. This used to be called Please Master. A few years ago, dialectical behavioral therapy clinic, the Marshall Linehan Clinic, changed this, and they changed it to ABC Please. I like this a little bit better. The mastery part is still in there, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. A in ABC Please stands for accumulate positive experiences. Now there's a few ways that we can accumulate positive experiences. Number one, we could do short-term accumulation, which is do something right now that's going to help us feel better. We're all different, and that depends on what it is for us. For me, maybe it's going on a bike ride. Maybe it's playing the guitar. Maybe it's baking cookies. Maybe it's hanging out with my buddy Francis. There's lots of different ways that we can accumulate positive experiences in the here and now. We also want to be working towards accumulating positive experiences in the long term. In the long term means what goals do we have down the road that's going to help us achieve what it is that we want. That's A in ABC Please. B is we want to build mastery. This is the part that used to be the Please Master with Mastery. Now mastery is we want to do one thing every single day that helps us feel better and more competent about our lives. For a lot of kids I've worked with, that might be journaling, maybe it's poetry, maybe it's crocheting, maybe it's playing the guitar. Something that I can do that I can feel confident and good about myself, that I've been able to increase that talent so that I can build mastery in that area. That'll help me feel better in the long run. C stands for cope ahead. Cope ahead is I need to think about potential situations that could be a negative situation for me. Maybe this is me thinking about how am I going to talk with my parents when I have a problem at school or something that they could potentially be upset with me at. And I'm going to run through the scenarios on how is it that I'm going to feel about this situation, how is it that my parents might act when I explain what's going on, what are all the various scenarios that could happen. Cope ahead is I am thinking about what I need to be prepared for in order to handle this situation. This will help me with emotion regulation because I'm going to be better prepared for undesired social situations. That's the ABC portion of ABC Please. Now the Please, this is ways to decrease vulnerability to negative emotions. The way that I often explain this skill to kids is I think about a knight who's going into battle, a knight from the medieval times. Now this knight going into battle is going to want to be prepared. He's going to want to have a helmet, a shield, a sword, boots, a horse, the things that the knight might typically have. That doesn't mean that the knight's not going to be hurt or injured or killed, so there's still a probability that he's going to have some negative things that happen to him. But he's reducing vulnerability to attack or to getting hurt. I think of this the same way as the Please skill. These are things that we can do that'll decrease vulnerability to negative emotions. We still might experience negative emotions, and we will, but we're more likely to not by doing these things. The P and the L in Please go together. The P is physical, and the L is the second letter in illness. So physical illness. This particular set says we want to treat our physical illness so that we're less likely to experience negative emotions. If I was sick and my buddy Francis came up to me and said, "Hey Peter, want to hear a joke? How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb?" And I wasn't really in the mood, and he said, "Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change." Well, typically that might be really funny, but in the moment I might not be very happy about that because I'm not feeling very good. The same concept with this goes to, am I going to try to go to work or school or achieve other things in my life when I'm physically sick? I need to take care of the illness and get better so that I can have better emotional regulation. When I try to push through these things, I'm more likely to experience negative emotions. The E in Please stands for eating. And this is we want to balance healthy eating. We don't want to eat too much, we don't want to eat the wrong kinds of foods, and we want to be mindful when we're skipping meals. Now I know a lot of people might skip meals maybe for religious purposes or other things, and that's okay. However, I need to be more mindful of when I am doing that, and mindful of am I just skipping a meal to skip a meal, because I'm more likely to be vulnerable to negative emotions if I do. The A in Please stands for avoid mood altering, the A is in altering, drugs. Now there's a couple of parts with this section. Number one, I need to take my medications as prescribed. If I don't like the way that my medications are working, or if I feel like I need a change, then I need to talk with my psychiatrist or my nurse practitioner or whoever it is that's in charge of that, and I need to get the correct dosages. B with avoid mood altering drugs is I need to not take illegal drugs, because that's going to contribute to negative emotions that I don't need in my life. So that's A in please. The S is sleep. I need to get the right amount of sleep. Not too much and not too little, and I need to be mindful when I'm having days or experiences when I can't get the right amount of sleep, because I need to know that I'm going to be more frustrated or irritated or whatever the negative emotions that are happening are. The E in please is exercise. For me, this is probably my number one thing with this one. When I exercise, I feel better. I get better sleep, I feel like I eat better, I don't get as sick, and daily exercise for me helps me decrease vulnerability to negative emotions. Just a few more emotion regulation skills that go along with this section. Number one, called the wave. When we experience our emotions, we want to experience them like a wave in the ocean. That wave's going to come and it's going to go. We need to understand that we are not the emotion, and we don't need to hold on to it, and we can experience our sensations and be mindful of that and then let it pass. Holding on to the emotion is going to cause more emotional suffering. Another emotion regulation skill is check the facts. Before I make assumptions, I need to look into it and see what are the facts in this situation. When I make assumptions, that's going to contribute to more negative emotions. The last skill with emotion regulation section is opposite action. We all have instinctual things that our brain tells us to do when we experience emotions. For example, if I'm experiencing fear, my brain says I need to avoid. With emotion regulation, I want to do something different than what my brain would typically say. If I'm experiencing fear, maybe what it is I need to do is to approach, and approach carefully if it's a safe situation. If I'm experiencing depression and my brain says I need to sleep for 8 hours, I need to try something different. Maybe I need to go and watch a funny YouTube video. Maybe I need to go on a walk and smell the flowers. By doing something opposite from what my brain would typically say, that's helping me change emotion regulation so that I have better emotional functioning.